Hola, welcome. My name is Erica Olmos, and today I'm going to show you how I made my own dress form. Now, I've seen different versions of how to make your own dress form. I've seen videos of people making their own dress forms using duct tape and taping their bodies up. And that's probably a more accurate way of doing it since you're taping up your own body, and it should be more accurate, but that didn't seem very fun to me, so I went with a different method. Instead, I went to this website called Bootstrap Fashion, and I was able to purchase a dress form pattern from them. They have different options. You can decide to buy a certain size of dress form, but they also have a different option where you could get a plus size customized DIY dress form pattern. That's what I did. They ask you for measurements, you input some information, you give them certain measurements, and you answer some questions regarding your posture, whether you have an arched back, whether your butt is big, average, or flat, and they're able to generate a personalized dress form pattern for you. So that's what I did. I went ahead and printed out the pattern and got working on it. Now, they do give you instructions and they give you a list of supplies that you will need to make the dress form. Before I started sewing the dress form, I did want to make sure that it would actually fit my body, so I did try it on, and it was pretty accurate for the most part, very close. So I did end up adding some to the bust area, and also ended up adding some more circumference to my high hip area, belly area, because in standardized average bodies, usually the hip measurement is the widest part of your body, but that's not true for my body. For my body, the high hip belly area is the widest part of my body, so I wanted my dress form to be accurate to my body, so I went ahead and added some to the high hip area so it fits my body. So I did that. Here I've cut and fused all the pieces. The pattern pieces come without any seam allowance, so I made sure to add it as I was cutting and transferred all the notches as well. I could have chosen to use a print or a pretty decorative fabric for this, but I thought it might be distracting when I'm draping, so I just used plain muslin instead. I also didn't pre-shrink the fabric like the instructions called for, because I feel like pre-shrunk fabric is softer and has a little give, and I don't want that for a dress form. I feel like the fabric would have stretched out some if I overstuffed it or something. I don't know. I didn't test out the theory, but that was my thought process. All that to say, I didn't pre-shrink the muslin for this dress form, and I'm happy with that decision. The instructions call for a sturdier heavyweight fabric for the inside structure. I used a cotton canvas for this. I was going to say cotton candy. The center piece is cut on the fold vertically and holds the pole right at the center of the dress form. I cut the armhole and dress form base out of cardboard. The instructions call for a 3-inch foam sponge for the neck. It also works as a cushion for the pole. I thought the sponge would have enough room to fit the neck base pattern, but it was off by a little. This is me trying to explain that I cut the sponge with enough room to fit most of the pattern, then glued it back to the side that needed that extra bit, and then cut it out completely. I began piecing together the back pieces, the bottom front, the top front, pressing open all the seams and snipping little triangles on the seam allowance on all the curved areas to help the seams lay flat, and then sewed all the pieces together, leaving the back seam open. I used a zigzag stitch to mark the placement of the bust, underbust, waist, and low hip. Later on, I removed the zigzag stitches because they didn't work out for me, but they might work out for you. Then I closed the back seam and prepared the neck pieces. The instructions say to leave only 1/8 of an inch seam allowance at the top of the seam, so I'm cutting off the excess. I attached the neck piece and the armhole pieces to the bodice. Here I'm checking to see how the cardboard will fit. I ended up sewing the canvas piece from the front notch to the back notch, leaving a slit, slid the cardboard into the slot, and then closed the rest of it. The cardboard is now in the armholes. I'm checking to see that it all looks alright. I'm adding the sponge to the neck. Now I'm turning it inside out for the next step. This is the interior piece made from canvas. The instructions say to add a few rows of vertical stay stitches and also stitch around the perimeter. Then, depending on the width of the tube you're using, I stitch down the center piece, leaving 1/4 of an inch ease. Now I'm pinning the interior piece to the inside center front and center back of the dress form, making sure to match the notches. Next, I'm prepping the base of the dress form, cutting off excess seam allowance on the center round seam so it turns nicely, pushing the corners out with a pointing object and pressing it down. Now press, I can add the zippers by top stitching them 1/4 of an inch from the edge. I love the fact that this pattern makes it easy to open up the dress form to make any changes if you need to. So I attached the base of the dress form, and now I'm cutting any excess fabric from the center of the interior and also cutting slits that I will need later on. But now I can slide the tube in. I did end up making the tube longer later on because it stood too short, but now to the stuffing. I did buy a 5-pound bag of polyfill to stuff the dress form. I also ended up using some fabric cabbage I had left over, which was pretty cool. I recommend to use fabric cabbage for the center of the dress form and base of the dress form, and save the polyfill for the outer sides. Fabric can make the stuffing look lumpy from the outside if you're not careful, and I imagine it wouldn't be that easy to pin through, maybe, I don't know. Anyways, I made sure to measure a lot before moving forward. I measured and turned and measured some more, and also I tried to make sure the right and left sides were even. The center tube helped keep a better eye on that. I did have trouble with that, which is why I didn't mind taking the dress form apart later on, because I knew I had several things to work on. Now that I'm done stuffing, I'm adding the cardboard base. Here I'm pulling out the fringe I cut from the center canvas piece that holds the tube. This will help hold the cardboard and stuffing in place. I was trying to glue it at first, but it was taking too long for the glue to dry and it was moving, so the glue didn't work out for this purpose, and I just ended up taping it instead. It worked well enough, and once the base was zip closed, it stayed put. Originally, when I finished up the dress form, I say originally because I did have to perform surgery a couple of times to get a more accurate fit. This dress form did have zigzag lines showing where the bust, the underbust, and the waist and hip areas were. But once I was done and I started measuring my body with the mannequin with the dress form, the lines didn't match up, so I had to investigate further, and I ended up removing all the zigzag lines and measuring myself more. so that everything was more accurate. So I ended up adding some more to the bust area. I ended up adding some more to the chest, upper chest area, opening it up some more, and also I had to remove some stuffing from the under bust area because this had a fuller cup and it didn't match my body. So I did that. And then I remarked my bust, under bust, waist, and hip lines with twill tape. So now I know where my lines are and they're accurate. She looks a little Sally Frankenstein put together-ish, but I'm okay with that. When I say she looked Sally Frankenstein-ish, this is what I mean. Underbust stitches. This is where the cup was originally. The underbust was here, but my underbust is up here. And you can kind of see where the zigzag lines used to be in here, and I had to correct those. I'm happy with the outcome. This was a fun project to work on. I can't believe I made this dress form. I didn't know it was this easy or possible. I also did end up making my own dress form arm. I didn't pay for a pattern for the arm. I did find a website that I'll link down below where designer called Sophie Hines, I believe her name is. She has a tutorial on how to draft your own dress form arm, so I followed that, and I'll link it down below, and I might make a video on how I did it in the future, maybe, because I also did have to perform a lot of surgeries on this arm, or two arms. But yeah, this was a fun project. I ended up making the shirt based on the basic pattern that I draped on this dress form, so I know that she fits me. So yeah, I'm happy. And if you're interested in making a dress form, I highly recommend you do it. It'll be fun.